Hi guys and gals, Shane Stevenson here at the Buffalo Naval Park, and we're going to head forward, and I'm going to be talking today about a weld and a blank that we get a lot of questions about. And it's going to be on turret 61. Okay, so of course, Cleveland classes, 4 6-inch turrets, 6 5-inch twins. For anti-aircraft, the 6-inch, the 6-inch were for shore surface bombardment. They toyed a little bit with anti-aircraft work, but the elevation of the guns and having to raise and lower them just made it untenable. All right, but here we're going to be talking a little bit about this weld and blank right here, and then also on port. So these are very prominent features because as we move around the turret itself, about 165 tons, the turret and the barbette. We had about 6.5-inch armor on the face. Around the curve here was 3-inch armor going around the curve. The sides was about 1.5. And then on the back it was about 1.25-inch armor. So we do have this nice smooth plate here of 1.5-inch armor, and then boom, that huge thick weld with the blank. And then of course it was for the rangefinder. So this video I'll talk a little bit about the rangefinder itself. Then I'll talk a little bit about why some modifications were made, and then I'm going to review a little bit the last few Clevelands that were put into service. That would be the Providence, Little Rock, Portsmouth, and the Manchester. And because this is a lo-fi video today, I actually have some photos that I'll show you in person, so to speak, as opposed to digitally. Alright, so when the U.S. Cleveland was constructed, even just during her war years, she added about 480 tons during her wartime service. Alright, that's updates to radar, that's updates to gun directors, countermeasure equipment. And so the Cleveland's already pretty top heavy, would become more top heavy. So there are some proposals to lessen the weight. Right? A couple of those proposals had to do with the STS, right? The steel that was especially around gun directors, even the back of the 5-inch mounts, splinter shielding, and areas of armor protection. So they talked about the pound force per square inch and reducing those. So from going, say, from a 40-pound STS down to a 30-pound STS, or a 40-pound STS down to a 20-pound STS. Of course, those are just proposals. One of the emergency proposals was to remove the rangefinders, especially from turrets 61 and 64. So you'd have the hood. All right. Let's show that again. So you'd have the hood and the shutter extending outward from this area here. Right, and of course that is for triangulation to determine the range of a target. So you'd have the 2 fixed points on the turret itself, one on port and starboard, and then you triangulate that. That angle then would be calculated out to the range or the distance to a target. So certainly by the later modifications, the question becomes, were they making any of those wartime modifications on the later commissioned Clevelands? Again, specifically with the 4 that I mentioned. And so I was able to use some photographic evidence, if all of the photographs were labeled appropriately. So, let's say for the Providence now, That's she was commissioned 15 May 1945. Interestingly enough, photographic evidence shows that she had the rangefinder right where you could see the welds here on turret 61, but not on turret 64. For the USS Little Rock, I'll cover that in a few minutes. For the Portsmouth, she was put into service 25 June 1945, and yes, she did have the rangefinders on all 4 turrets. And then for the Manchester, she was a little bit later, 29 October 1946. Right? No, they were not added at the time of her commissioning in 29 October 1946. But for the Little Rock, and this is where I'll show some images. So this is the commissioning booklet. I know in very early videos I talked about this. This is a great thing that we have in our collection, one copy of the commissioning program. All right, if we zoom in here, you will clearly see the rangefinder right there. All right, you can see the hood, all right, extending out, and the shutter with that dark dot right there. But if you take a look down on turret 61, I mean, we're seeing the guns for turret 62, we're seeing the bloomers that cover the barrels, right? But I would expect that you would just be able to see it coming right out of here, out of that lighter area, and I just don't see it. Now that photograph for the commissioning booklet could have been taken at any time, and that's the one they chose. She does look like she's ready to be commissioned and put into service for the U.S. Navy, but there are other photographs that, while not dead-on photographs, there might be something in the way, something like that. It does seem as though around the commissioning that there were rangefinders on turret 61. Right, so that becomes a little nebulous because of that photographic evidence. But very clearly, by now, again, commissioned 17 June 45, now they're pulling into port in Rio de Janeiro on 6 November 45, so whatever that turns out to be 5 months later. I have a picture from our historic picture book here, and if we zoom in, I don't know how much more I can zoom in. So here she is again pulling into port, and it does not appear as though on turret 61 that she has the rangefinders. You can see them on turret 62 right there, that arm extending out, but on turret 61 there's the life raft, but no. So based on that evidence, sorry everybody, so based on that evidence, if they were on during the commissioning in June, they were certainly removed by the time of their South American cruise, which was late October. So they left their home port in late October. And they hit Rio de Janeiro on the 6th of November 1945. So again, this is one of those interesting questions that we get regarding those thick welds with the rangefinder where the hood would come out, and why it's blanked over today. So we might not know exactly when it was taken off, but that evidence shows by November 45 it was. Right, some of them I've kind of reviewed, all of the Clevelands, most of them had them on, of course, at some point in their career. Some of them had them removed based again on photographic evidence, like the Mobile seems to have removed them during service. The Vincennes seems to have removed them during service. Duluth, Miami. So at some point, and these are now wartime cruisers, Cleveland class cruisers. All right, so they're in action. And the Okie City, also removed later after commissioning. So they would have them on, then they'd make a modification and take them off. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoy. Please leave questions, comments, thoughts in the comment section. And you know what, as always, thank you for your continued support, and we'll keep bringing you videos. Thanks again, everyone.